Another widely used technique in fabric painting is the watercolor technique, which can be done in various ways. And I want to demonstrate the most practical and beautiful one for you. First, we choose a model, whether it's on your phone or a printout, that's in a watercolor style. Or if you have the ability to come up with a creative idea yourself to implement a watercolor design. The method for doing watercolor is like this. If you want to transfer the pattern onto the fabric using carbon paper, try to use the yellow carbon paper and don't go over it again with a pencil or try to make the designs and patterns darker. Or if you're going to transfer the design using only a pencil, do it very lightly and just mark the key points of the design on the fabric. Mark a few spots and just have those general outlines on the fabric. For the rest, follow the model and paint it directly with your brush. Because in the watercolor technique, since the paints are diluted and the fabric gets very wet, the pencil's graphite will bleed, and even if you use heat erasable pens, it'll still smudge the colors a bit. Now for this design I've chosen, I'm going to mark just a few parts with a pencil. Roughly. For example, my large flower is in this area. I have a branch here. And now here's the bud that's going to be worked on. And this part, I'll try not to use the pencil too much. One of the methods used for the watercolor style is to wet the fabric. Some people prefer to wet it with a spray, while others soak the whole fabric, lay it on the table, and start. To have more control over the watercolor technique and prevent the colors from spreading too much or getting messy in some spots, I prefer to use a brush. We actually draw our design with a wet brush using water. This way, you're doing the watercolor style, but the colors are somewhat more controllable. To show you what the result will look like, I'll put some pink and white paint on my palette, and in many places, I won't even mix them. I'm just placing them side by side, and once again, my brush, I'll get it really wet, dip it into the paint, and start applying it onto my fabric. The thinness of the paint combined with the wet fabric helps achieve that watercolor effect we're aiming for. But since the entire fabric isn't wet, we have some control over how much the paint spreads. It's not like the whole fabric will get soaked in color or, the colors will just bleed into each other. Suddenly green and pink will get mixed up together, or maybe we'd end up with a muddy, messy look on a fabric. It's really important for our paints to be very, very thin. So with this glass of water you have nearby, you should constantly dip your brush into it before you use the paint. Okay, the initial part of the work is done. Now, for the next steps, let's talk about what comes next. Using a finer brush, we'll start on the areas where the colors need to be a bit more intense. Now, we'll use paint that's a bit thicker, meaning we won't be thinning it down quite as much. This paint is completely liquid, so it's basically just like water. Now, for the parts where the colors need to be a bit more concentrated, we don't dilute them as much and start working on the shading. It blends much more easily. With the watercolor technique, the colors blend together effortlessly. These edges blend out really smoothly.